Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Codi Ann Smith, and today we're going to be talking all about coming out of the fog, especially if you have dealt with a narcissist and a covert narcissist at that. So a narcissist is pretty much an energy vampire, and if you don't know what that is, go check out my video on energy vampires, and it'll help enlighten you a little bit. But more than likely, if you're here watching this right now, you are already aware of what you've been dealing with. And the thing is that all of us kind of enter our healing journeys a little bit different than one another. So for me, before I had my stage 1 of a realization, before I had the realization that I was dealing with a person like this, a covert narcissist, and I don't really like labels, but it does help to describe the archetype of the person that we are talking about. And some of the things that they have in common, they're just like lumped together. So that's why I'm using that label today. But before I had my realization, you know, I was in a very dark place. I went through the dark night of soul for a good, almost about a little over a decade. And there was a lot of things, you know, there was a lot of toxic thoughts, toxic beliefs about myself. I was eating bad. I was addicted to cigarettes and alcohol, and I was not taking care of myself at all. I had a very low self-worth, like many of you do, and a lot of you might have even fell into this addiction stuff as well, because the truth is, when you get beat down for so long, you don't know what to do anymore, and you look for a means of escape, right? You're trying to fill that void. And so before I had the realization that I was actually dealing with a narcissist, a covert narcissist, I had already began my healing journey on a physical level. And what I believe is that we need to heal mind, body, and soul. And so it's really important that we really take that into consideration when we're healing from any type of trauma, any type of abuse, or even dysfunctional families in general. So I had my realization after I detoxed my body. I went and I quit smoking cigarettes, and I quit drinking alcohol, and I went on a raw food diet with herbs, and I detoxed my body for a good while. And if you haven't seen my before and after picture, I will post that here in the video, and you will see how I was before and how I was after I detoxed and cleaned up my life and had the realization of the fact that I was actually dealing with a narcissist, and a covert narcissist at that. So I think that's kind of stage 1 for us. If you don't already come into it with healing first, you might stumble upon something on the internet. If you're something like me, you might have been Googling their odd behavior and wondering why you're always finding yourself trying to talk sense into grown adults that you would think would already understand the basic concepts of life and how to treat people and how to have a conversation and communicate. And you might just be in that foggy place, you know. Luckily for me, detox allowed me to remove a lot of that fog so that I was able to see a lot clearer, and I started to have some realizations. So the biggest realization that I had was one night when me and him were having an argument. And I remember that our arguments were very, they were very circular. We could never really get to the end point. We could never come on common ground. And even no matter how many times I was surrendering and viewing myself and being aware of my actions and behaviors and the things that I was saying, that he was unable to do the same. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to record this conversation, and I'm going to see if I'm actually crazy or if what could possibly be going on. So I decided to put the phone on record, and I just kept asking him questions as he was getting angrier and angrier at me. And I just continued to stay calm, which is very difficult. But I do highly recommend doing that, because the more calm you can be, the less emotion that you give them, the less fuel that they have. So anyways, I recorded our conversation, and when I went back and listened to it after the day was over, I realized something. I realized that this person was telling me that I said things and that I did things that I actually didn't do. He would say, well, you just said this, or you just said you did that. And I actually didn't. And I was like, my jaw almost hit the floor. I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I feel like I just struck gold, even though it was in the middle of a shitstorm. You know what I mean? I started feeling like a relief that I knew that I wasn't actually crazy, especially after years of blaming myself and running into all these diagnoses of borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, what other ones did they give? ADHD. So I had all these, like, this platter of diagnoses, and really the main problem, nobody once asked me, you know, how's your relationship? But anyways, the realization period when I realized that he was manipulating me or skewing my reality, I didn't even know what it was called at the time. And then I started going on Google and looking things up, like lacking empathy and what it means when people try to skew your reality. And I figured out that it was more like gaslighting. And I started reading articles about other people who have dealt with people like this. And I was just awake at that point. I was like, oh my gosh, there's an answer for all this craziness, but the craziness is still there, you know? So stage 1 is about realization. And when you realize that you've been dealing with something like this, then you kind of go into stage 2, which is like the denial or the bounce back, or you're doing the tango kind of, where you're like, but is this true? Because he's nice to me sometimes, and then he's really not other times, but maybe I deserved that. Maybe I was acting in a way that deserved that kind of behavior and reaction from this person. And when that happens, immediately you need to be conscious and aware and remind yourself of the times that they actually weren't normal towards you. Because you're coming out of the fog. You just realized what was really happening, but then you doubt yourself and you second guess yourself and you don't trust yourself, especially if you've been in this relationship for a while, because you've been trained for years and years and years that what you believe is not true. So when you are trained that whatever it is that you believe as your reality isn't real, then you question your reality nonstop. You question yourself and you ask yourself if you were really being that bad person, or if you really, you know, maybe you deserved it or something. And this is like the tango. This is where you're like, but is this real? And you can get stuck there for a very, very long time if you're not careful. And for me, what I had to do, what I started doing was I started paying attention to all the times that there would be a blow up. So that I would pay attention to every time that we would go through the cycle of abuse. And I would write on a sticky note and keep it and write the date on it. And then I would put it on a calendar, like a desk-sized calendar that I had in my bedroom. And I would keep track of what happened, when it happened, what was going on. And I started noticing a pattern. Okay, I started noticing the narcissistic abuse pattern. And the thing with the covert narcissist is they are absolutely not overt about any of it. At least with an overt narcissist, you know that they're a narcissist because they are so grandiose and they're very outward about it. But with a covert narcissist, they're very vulnerable and they're always the victim. And it's really hard to notice at first, especially if you're a highly sensitive person or an empath, because you feel like it's your duty and your job in this world to help heal other people. And while that might be what you feel like, it might be your life purpose if you have a deep feeling of that, but what we got to remember is that we can't heal people who don't want healing. And so the best way that we can actually heal others is by healing ourselves and then going out and helping. So that brings me into stage 3, where you get to begin your healing journey. Once you have had that realization, once you have done the tango for a little while, you get to step in and you get to step into your healing, mind, body, and soul, and heart, because we have emotional stuff we have to work through, and we have mental stuff we have to work through. And, you know, everything is affected. And when you can heal your body in the same way that I did, then you really release that toxicity, and you open yourself up to being able to have that clarity. You have that clarity more than you ever have had before, I guarantee it, because your body is so full of toxicity, because our emotions are just as toxic or more toxic than food. And if we hold on to that toxicity and that toxic negative emotion and negative energy, it festers, and eventually it will manifest as dis-ease in the body. And you will see symptoms, and you will get diagnosis after diagnosis of physical ailments, and you're like at a loss, especially with our medical system these days. And so really, it's important that you start your healing journey. Yes, it's really good to understand everything that you can, because it really brings clarity to the situation. It really brings clarity to all the craziness that you've been experiencing for so many years. But there is a point when we have to begin our healing journey, because if you stay in that spot of the realization and the bounce back, then you are not going to improve, because it's all about, you know, healing yourself first. Because we have to remember that there's a reason why we attracted this narcissist, and it isn't because we're a victim necessarily, even though when we're unaware and unconscious of what's going on, we are absolutely a victim in that sort of situation. But once we realize what's going on and we know better, at that point we are no longer a victim, and it is our responsibility to take the wheel and begin to heal in mind, body, and soul, and really bring your soul back into you. Because the way that I could best describe this before I hit the dark night of the soul, was I felt soul loss. I felt like a part of me was leaving. And you can also check out my video on soul loss. I'll link it up here to see if maybe that's something that is you might be experiencing as well. So when you're healing, you're coming back into your authentic self again. You're bringing all the pieces of you that have been scattered and shattered back into one, so that you have your power, you have your internal power where you cannot be shaken, and you know who you are again. You start to regain your identity again, and you start to remember who you were before this narcissistic abuse. And the beauty of this healing period is that you really get to begin to see, oh yeah, I used to be outgoing, or I used to love to be around people, or I used to love to read, or, you know, there's a bunch of things that you used to do that you loved that you stopped doing. I guarantee it, because all of us go through this. Every person who's dealt with covert narcissistic abuse has dealt with this on some scale or another. Okay? So after we move from beginning to heal, which is something that will continue probably for the rest of your life, but don't let that discourage you, because that does not mean that you will not be empowered. It just means that there's always going to be something that shows up in your life that you're like, oh, okay, I need to integrate that into my being. So it's not like you're always doing this dreadful healing. Healing has stages as well, and you can move through them rather quickly, or you can take a little bit more time depending on the severity of your case, how receptive you are to the healing, and that type of thing. So when we begin to heal, we start to step into conscious creation. So before we attracted the narcissist, we were very unconscious and unaware, because if we were aware and conscious of what was going on, we would have never done that. We would have never allowed that relationship to even begin. And so when we start to consciously create, we realize that we are the creators of our reality. We realize that through our healing and through our wounds and our pain, that we actually have reemerged into this beautiful person that can now be a conscious co-creator in this universe. And you start to manifest. Because manifestation is really just co-creating. It's bringing the inside desires out to the external, or or it's like bringing your inside desires out to the 3D world. So you are manifesting, you are a conscious co-creator where you really get clear on what it is that you want for your life, who you want in your life, and that type of thing. And this is one of the most beautiful steps here, because after all that fog gets lifted, you get to see who you truly are. You get to step into your power. You get to step back into your power, the power that you used to have before all this happened and it kind of just floated away. You get that again. You get to step back into that, and you get to consciously create, and that is some fun stuff. So after you are able to do that, after you get that healing done, or you at least begin on it, that's when you can really go out and help other people. Because let's be honest, if you got with a covert narcissist, it's probably because you wanted to help them in some way, shape, or form, because they are the vulnerable kind. They're the kind that are like helpless little babies, and you're like, I have to save them. You know, and you feel like you have to do something for these people. And so once you can go through these stages, when you can really begin your healing and start working through the stages of healing as well, then you can help people. But make sure that the people that you're helping are open and receptive to your help. Make sure that they are the people who are like, I am ready to change my life. Don't waste your time on an energy vampire. Do not do that, because if you allow yourself to waste your time on an energy vampire, you will never be able to shine your light, because you will be drained over and over and over again. And the truth is, if you have a desire to help the world or help other people, then that desire is there for a reason. It's your soul's desire, and it's time to step into that soul's desire. But first, you know, we have to go through these stages. We have to come out of the fog and really begin to heal. And that is when we can step up and serve the world to our highest potential. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If you are having problems with this and struggling with coming out of the fog, go ahead and schedule a one-on-one session below. I would love to meet with you and help you, because I know how confusing it can be, and it really is helpful when you have somebody that knows what they're looking for and can help point that out to you and get you on your healing journey. So have a beautiful, beautiful day today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.